Greetings, everybody. Welcome back once again to another episode of Spliced in Later. I apologize if you heard some weird scratching sound in our intro. My wonderful cat Winston decided to rip up the carpet while I was recording that. Thank you, Winston. Always appreciated. We are back once again for another movie review. A very highly anticipated one that I'm very excited to talk to you about, so much so that I've got home from seeing the movie. It's almost midnight, but I'm going to get this recorded and up to you as fast as possible. Today we are continuing our ever-winding look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe with a look at Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Yes, the MCU, the thing I talk about probably the most here on this channel. I've got a continuing series going on for that, which consists of two separate approaches. One, reviewing the new stuff that comes out, whether it's the new movies like Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Spider-Man No Way Home, etc., or summarization of the new shows on Disney Plus, like WandaVision and Loki and Moon Knight and all of that stuff. Or we go way back all the way to the beginnings of the MCU, starting with Iron Man in 2008, and we are slowly working our way through all that content. All content that I consider canon, which means we've been talking about Netflix, ABC, all of that stuff. It's been a wild ride. As I've said before, Marvel Cinematic Universe, the whole concept, the whole thing is one of my favorite things. As I've said many times before, it's just, I'm impressed at the way this universe was built and has been able to work and survive for as long as it has and weave itself together in stories that complement each other but can stand on their own. We had the almost perfect Infinity Saga, which culminated in the Avengers facing off against Thanos, along with the Guardians of the Galaxy and everybody else they'd come across. And then we went into uncharted territories with Phase 4, which approached different aspects. We still had to release the movies, but now with the release of Disney Plus, a limited series focusing on other characters from the MCU, we're getting their own shows. All important, all apparently all tied together, so you have to watch it all. And coming into a point where now seeing certain things is homework for something you want to see. If you want to get everything out of Doctor Strange 2, you have to have watched Spider-Man No Way Home and WandaVision. And the upcoming Captain Marvel 2, The Marvels, requires you to have watched WandaVision and Miss Marvel, which I haven't been particularly too happy about. I like when it all interconnects and weaves in with each other, but if someone can't pick up any of these movies and watch it and enjoy it and not feel like they're missing out, it's less significant here now. Also turbulent times in terms of with the COVID pandemic postponing Phase 4 for a long time, shifting some stuff around, and the general overworking of visual effects artists, and even the consensus that there's a certain aimlessness when it's coming to this later stuff. We're all building apparently to a big multiverse saga with Kang the Conqueror. Whether or not that will be Jonathan Majors is up in the air, really, if you pay attention to what's going on in the news at the moment. But it's time will tell when we get to the end and we have Avengers, Kang Dynasty, and Secret Wars. If you can look back on this earlier stuff like Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, and Thor: Love and Thunder, and be like, yes, these were all important cogs in the machinery. Whereas in the original Infinity Saga, the consistency of critical and audience reception was generally solid to high. There's been a much more of a mixed bag with the latest stuff that even I have to agree with. There's been some good stuff. Shang-Chi, Spider-Man No Way Home. I really like Eternals. And there's been some so-so stuff like Thor: Love and Thunder and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. It's to a point where I'm still very excited to talk about MCU, and I always will be keen to see the new stuff as soon as it comes up, whether it's in the movies or in Disney Plus. But now it's with a sense of wariness that I may not, it's not guaranteed that I will enjoy every product that is put out for me to consume. So with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 coming out, it's now available as of today or tomorrow. I assume by the time most people listen to this, it will be tomorrow, which means it will be available in cinemas everywhere. If you're listening in America, I don't know, maybe Friday, who knows. Guardians of the Galaxy has always been a very, very solid, very well-received part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I've already done a whole episode talking about the first Guardians of the Galaxy, but in summary for that, it was basically the little movie that could, the entry into the Marvel Cinematic Universe that proved, one, the MCU knew what it was doing in terms of storytelling, and two, there was a eagerness and an exception for lesser known Marvel characters. Guardians of the Galaxy is big now, but back in 2014, when it was announced that there was going to be a movie featuring a talking tree and a raccoon with guns in space, there was generally a bit more of a what? But what worked for it so well was the incredible casting for it and the incredible writing and direction by James Gunn, who has really crafted the Guardians of the Galaxy stories to be very, very well written and incredibly entertaining, equal parts hilarious comedy and genuinely emotional stuff about this misfit makeshift family of con artists and thieves and assassins who work together to protect the galaxy from terrible, terrible, terrible threats. You've got great characters in Peter Quill, played by Chris Pratt, the human from Earth calling himself Star-Lord, the daughter of Thanos, Gamora, played by Zoe Saldana, the very literal but incredibly stupid Drax the Destroyer, played by Dave Bautista, former villainous, now awkward hero Nebula, played by Karen Gillan, lovely sweet empath Mantis, played by Pom Klementieff, or a grumpy ass tragic Rocket Raccoon voiced by Bradley Cooper, and I Am Groot, Tree Man, played by Vin Diesel, I guess. They're all very funny, they all have their own quirks, and they all mesh together in a beautiful sense. And the way James Gunn writes them and then directs the stories, it's certainly something that stands on its own away from the MCU. There's something special about these Guardians movies. You could never watch any other MCU thing and you would still really like and appreciate these Guardians movies. This third one is a little difficult because the Guardians played a huge role in Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, and some stuff happened to them in that. So if you were just to watch this original trilogy and you didn't watch anything else, you might go, huh. But for the most part, they're so far out of reach from everything else that's going on in the MCU because it's very much focused on Earth and Earth things. They've got their own unique cast of characters, their own unique settings, their way of interacting with things, and they have their own unique feel and attitude and all of that stuff, which really stands up on top of everything else. So it's been a while since we last properly had a Guardians movie. I've talked about the first one in 2014. I haven't got to talking about the second one yet. That came out in 2017. Very, very good. I didn't like it as much as the first one when I first saw it, but over time I've come to really appreciate it, especially its whole theme of fathers and sons that you get with Quill and Yondu and Ego and Rocket and all of that stuff there. But the Guardians have not been out of the limelight. They've been in the Avengers movies, and they showed up in Thor: Love and Thunder to get rid of Thor so he wouldn't be in Guardians 3. And then they had their own little Christmas special where they abducted Kevin Bacon and made him sing Christmas songs for them. Obviously a lot of behind the scenes stuff as well, with some stuff from some very silly move by Disney to fire James Gunn. And then he went off and directed the Suicide Squad for DC, which was also fantastic because James Gunn is just incredible when it comes to making these emotional movies involving super characters from comics. Delayed Guardians 3 to get that out. Now he's back and it's finally free for everybody to watch it. But with everything going on with Ant-Man and the Wasp and Thor: Love and Thunder and the potential Marvel fatigue that's going on, does Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 fall into that same trap? Is it inferior compared to what came before? Are the cracks showing in this little corner of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's world? And I can happily say, absolutely not. This movie is fucking fantastic. Could be the best of the Guardians movies. It's definitely on par with the others. Right up there with James Gunn's usual rep for a very emotional storytelling with some incredible comedy as well. Family drama, all of that. Unique visual style for direction. Interesting new characters, big action set pieces, emotional climactic final showdowns. and leaving you with all the feels at the end. This is my favorite movie of the year by far. So my worries before can be put to rest. And if you had worries, I can happily tell you, don't worry about it. I can't talk too much about the plot of this movie because it kind of is important for you to go into this not knowing what to expect. Having watched the movie, I'm annoyed if you have seen the trailers. A lot of stuff in those trailers are from scenes that you remember. So when you're watching the movie, you're sort of like, oh, okay, I can sort of see what's going to happen because I remember I saw this scene in the trailer. So that's frustrating. So I won't contribute to that. I'll do my very best to just give you the bare basics of what you need to know here. But basically what it comes down to, we pick up Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. The Guardians have their little base on nowhere inside the head of a dead celestial god. Quill is very upset. Gamora, spoilers for Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, died during the course of that adventure. Thanos sacrificed her so he could get the Soul Stone. But due to some wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff in Avengers Endgame, Gamora was brought back, but a version of Gamora that had not met Peter Quill or the Guardians of the Galaxy, who had still been in service of Thanos. So she is not hanging out with the Guardians. She's gone off and joined the Ravagers, wants nothing to do with them. So Quill's heartbroken about that. But then suddenly, Adam Warlock, played by Will Poulter, who's hinted at the end of Guardians 2 as being some super powerful being developed by the Sovereign in revenge against the Guardians, attacks and pretty much nearly kills Rocket Raccoon. And in trying to help him, they realize that there's some shit going on inside him that prevents him from doing that. So with a ticking clock, with Rocket's life ebbing away, they have to follow the clues to discover Rocket's origins, where he came from, how he became the grumpy ass raccoon that we all know and love. And on this journey, we delve right into it. We get some full-on emotional flashbacks that show Rocket's early life and how he came to be, conflicting, involved with the main antagonist of this film, the High Evolutionary, played by Chukwudi Iwuji. And I can't say much more about that. The journey into helping Rocket leads into what happens for the rest of the movie. But to talk about any other things, particularly plot-wise at that point on, will spoil a little bit of the movie for you. I will say that this is the most emotional of the Guardians movies. This is the one that's really going to pull at your heartstrings and make those tears well up in your eyes. And it's a lot of that is alluded to Rocket. Maybe he dies, maybe he doesn't. You'll just have to watch the movie and find out. This movie's fantastic. I felt at the start, I was like, oh man, this movie seems very depressing. It starts off on a very depressing note. But I don't know if that's struggling to find its balance there, or if it's just knowing what I know now after the movie, it complements what happens for the rest of the movie easy enough. But somehow all the pieces just fit together seamlessly, and you have yourself an enjoyable ride. This movie's 2.5 hours long. It doesn't feel it. The time just flies by. Let's see what really works about this movie. First of all, the story by James Gunn. It's incredibly powerful, emotional, especially when it comes to Rocket's origins, but also what's going on with the other Guardians of the Galaxy and their relationship with one another. This movie, more than any of the others, really plays into the Guardians being an ensemble, and as such, the movie is not supposed to be specifically about one character more than the others. The first two were ensembles, but you could argue that with Chris Pratt as Peter Quill, Star-Lord, he's the leader, he's the main character. A lot of what's happening in those movies is reflective on his decisions, his backstory, his need to achieve certain goals. In this movie, yes, you could sort of argue that shifts to Rocket, but Rocket's stuff is more what sets the story in motion. The Guardians team is a lot bigger in this one than the last two. The first two really focused primarily on the main five, Quill, Gamora, Drax, Groot, and Rocket. Slowly started to add in other characters over two. But in this one, we've got Nebula and Mantis full on a part of the team. And to a lesser extent, you also have Kraglin, who is Yondu's second in command of the Ravagers, and is sort of has taken on his role, but in the Guardians. and also Cosmo the space dog, who appeared in little brief cameos in the last two movies. In this one, full-on part of the team, voiced by Maria Bakalova. I don't know if it's controversial that Cosmo the space dog is a girl. If you think it is, something wrong with you. Get over it. Jesus Christ. That being said, Kraglin and Cosmo don't really do that much in the movie, but they are a full-on part of the team, and they get their big moments to shine in the movie. But aside from them, you have seven Guardians of the Galaxy, all vying for attention, and somehow they all get it. They all play off each other so well. The relationship, the way they talk to each other, in this movie especially, you feel like they are a family that loves each other. In the first two, they were arguing a lot. You could feel like they got on each other's nerves, and they were having trouble standing each other. As most families obviously feel. You go to anybody's family house in Christmas time and you'll see that. But with this one, no one's hiding the fact that they all love each other and they care for each other, with the exception of Gamora, who I'll get into in a bit. But whether it's Mantis coming to terms to step out of everyone else's shadow and be more independent, Drax stepping away from being the idiot of the group and really showing that he can come through in times of trouble, Nebula very standoffish, allowing herself to feel any sort of emotion. Obviously, Rocket's origins, what made him become so closed off and distant and aggro, what happened to him, what he went through, will make you cry. I'm sure of it. Yes, it's CGI animals, but the things that happens to Rocket and his little pals in the High Evolutionaries prison is upsetting for sure. You've also got Quill dealing with Gamora being dead but not being dead, and where his place really is in the galaxy. And Gamora, I really like her role in this. It's an interesting take Zoe Saldana does for it, because this is a new Gamora. This is a Gamora that hasn't gone through all the character development of the last two, and her attitude in this is a lot more selfish, self-preservational. None of that connection that everybody else has. Everybody else is such a strong, solid family unit, and she's like, in a flip of the story, she's the wild card. She's the one that'll abandon others to save herself. So her character journey on here to get to a point where Gamora is sort of close to where she was in the last movies, but still, because her life has taken a different trajectory, she's never going to be exactly the same. And I really like that. It was an interesting take to do that with the character rather than just reset her to be the Gamora that we all know and love. It's kind of like saying that Gamora's death did stick, and this is a new character of sorts. The other characters as well, you've got Will Poulter in here as Adam Warlock, who is probably my only gripe with the movie. He had to be in the movie. Adam Warlock is a very famous character from the Guardians of the Galaxy, and he was set up in the post-credits for Guardians 2. But in terms of his role in the story, they definitely know what they want to do with him at the start of the movie, and they definitely know what they want to do with him at the end of the movie. But in the middle, they sort of struggle to get him from point A to point B and where he should fit into the story or not. I really like Will Poulter's portrayal of him as like this naive young kid who's been awakened too early, but has the powers of a god, just doesn't really know how to use it. I really like it, and I would like to see more of him. I just think if you're going into this movie going, all right, I'm a big Adam Warlock fan, I'm ready, you're probably not going to get that, unfortunately. But hopefully we'll see more of him in the future. Our villain of the story, the High Evolutionary, played by Chukwudi Iwuji, very successful. One of my all-time favorite villains, not because I like him in any sense of the word. A true successful villain can be engaging, have incredible screen presence, have good character development to understand their emotions and drives, so they're not just villainous for the sake of being a villain, but also to be so good at being a villain that you despise them. You want them to die. You don't hate the villain because he's poorly developed. You hate the villain because he has successfully proved to you that he sucks and he needs to go. And that's absolutely here. The High Evolutionary is like on the brink of insanity. One minute he's calm and collected and speaking plainly, and others he's screaming and yelling And the intensity of the performance from Chukwudi Iwuji is just marvelous. I loved it. He's going to go down for me as one of my all-time favorite MCU villains by far. The visual style of James Gunn looks great. I was thinking a lot during the movie that they should have had James Gunn direct Quantum Mania, because where the quantum realm just turned into bland, boring CGI backdrops. The visual style in this film, as with the other Guardians, when they go to different planets and the way those planets operate and the color palette and all of that, just looks marvelous. And I was like, this stuff would have worked perfectly in the quantum realm. It fits perfectly with what you remember for the Guardians in terms of look and feel, so nothing's going to feel like it doesn't belong with what you expect from these movies. I honestly can't go too much more into it because I really don't want to spoil any of this for anybody. And if I say too much about one thing or another, it's going to ruin everybody's experience. But I will end this by saying that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 for me gets a 9 out of 10. It could be the first best of the Guardians movies. It could be my favorite of the Guardians movies. But at the very least, it is dead equal with the first two. This is a solid trilogy. It is a satisfactory conclusion as well to James Gunn's version of the Guardians. I don't know exactly the specifics, but I do know that this is probably his last film and probably the last film of several actors in the role of certain Guardians characters. The Guardians of the Galaxy will return, no doubt about that, but never will they be in the same form and the same visual style and the same probably emotional intensity that has been under James Gunn's direction and writing and following these particular characters portrayed by these particular actors. It's a fantastic time. It earns its 2.5 hour runtime. All the characters that we know and love are serviced greatly and all have their moments to shine. All the new characters, with the slight exception of Adam Warlock, are all welcome additions and get their moments as well. There's lots of little tributes to Guardians history, whether it's sneaky cameos or callbacks or references to music or places from the other movies. It's just something that will have you constantly shifting between having a big smile on your face and laughing at what you're seeing and feeling the tears well up behind your eyes because you are just so moved by what you are seeing on this screen. Definitely my favorite movie of the year so far. I think it's going to be difficult for a lot of movies after this to top it. If you are unsure of going to see this movie based on your recent disappointment or airness to the other MCU films, this one is unique, this one is different, this one proves why the Guardians of the Galaxy are the gold standard of the MCU movies by far. Fantastic, loved it, great stuff, go check it out. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you have enjoyed. I will be back next week for a normal episode, I believe, because the week after that kicks off an uninterrupted, probably 4 or 5 weeks of just constant movie reviews for the new movies in the cinemas, and I look forward to bringing that to you. I don't know what next week's episode will be. I hope it's good. We'll have to wait and see. But until then, I love and appreciate you all as always. Thank you for listening to me. It's a treat as always. You've been spliced in later. Adios, muchachos. I'll catch you next time.